In the final months of World War II, as cities fell and governments collapsed, entire divisions, archives and operations simply vanished from record. What was left behind were fragments, blurred photographs, half-burned documents, coded transmissions that ended mid-sentence. Across Europe and beyond, investigators, intelligence officers and historians have tried to piece together the truth hidden within sealed vaults and erased files. These are not legends, but the residue of real events, the movements of men and machines that defied surrender and slipped into the dark corners of post-war history. What follows is drawn from the forgotten pages of military archives, where ink fades but secrets remain. Chapter 1: The Vanished Convoy of Operation Solstice. In the bitter winter of February 1945, the Eastern Front was collapsing at an unprecedented rate. Soviet forces were advancing through Pomerania, encircling pockets of Wehrmacht resistance, and German high command was desperate to evacuate key assets before they could fall into enemy hands. It was during this chaos that Operation Solstice was conceived. The operation, ordered directly from Hitler's Führerhauptquartier, called for a convoy to depart Stettin under strict secrecy. The convoy consisted of 15 medium cargo trucks, 2 Panther tanks as escorts, and a specialized radio command car equipped with the latest encryption machinery provided by the Funkaufklärungsdienst. Its manifest, labeled Nur für Führerhauptquartier, listed highly classified cargo, including uranium oxide, advanced radar components, and personal effects of select SS scientific personnel attached to the Ahnenerbe division. Orders stressed absolute discretion. No unit outside the convoy command was to know its destination. On February 18th, at precisely 03 Thalers hours, the convoy departed Stettin along secondary forest roads toward an unknown location in the south. Weather reports indicate a severe snowstorm that reduced visibility to under 50 meters, complicating coordination and reconnaissance. Early intelligence intercepts by Bletchley Park, flagged in a decrypt from the Enigma network, picked up a cryptic call sign, Edelweiss 12. The transmission abruptly ceased after 05.17 hours, and no subsequent messages were ever received. Soviet aerial reconnaissance conducted in the following days reported no sightings of the convoy or any engagement with enemy forces along the route. The convoy's disappearance became a point of concern, but no evidence emerged on the surface. Weeks later, Allied forces advancing into Pomerania discovered only faint tire tracks leading into dense pine forests near Lake Druitz, but no vehicle wreckage, personnel remains, or cargo. In 1957, MI6 declassified memoranda referencing Operation Solstice, noting that fragments of burnt documents marked Reichspostschutzzstelle. Kielzer suggested the convoy's cargo included materials intended for underground research facilities, still operational under clandestine names. The memoranda hinted at a network of former Wehrmacht and SS officers who continued the evacuation, possibly establishing safe routes for critical technologies into neutral or undisclosed territories. Eyewitness testimony collected in the 1960s described men in civilian clothing guarding forest paths at night, intercepting shipments and rerouting them before Soviet patrols could detect them. Physical evidence recovered decades later included rusted fragments of Panther tank hulls and truck chassis discovered near an abandoned logging camp, but these artifacts bore no identifiable serial numbers, as if intentionally scrubbed from military registries. Further investigation into surviving Kriegsmarine transport logs and Reichsbahn movement sheets revealed inconsistencies. The convoy was never listed as having departed from Stettin's main rail yard, yet satellite photographic analysis from 1945-46 indicates heavy machinery transport across the Northern Lakes region. Intelligence dossiers from British and American sources speculated on the fate of the convoy, proposing scenarios from an accident in the frozen lakes to secret Soviet capture or deliberate disinformation campaigns by German intelligence to obscure post-war extraction efforts. Cross-referencing these claims with survivor accounts of Ahnenerbe, scientists suggests that the convoy may have been tasked not only with material evacuation but with relocating personnel critical to Nazi experimental programs. Subsequent interviews with former Allied interrogators reveal that some scientists were apprehended, transferred to temporary holding camps, and then disappeared again, leaving incomplete trails that persist in classified archives. In 1973, a Polish forestry worker discovered a partially concealed cache of crates containing partially corroded metal boxes stamped with Reichsamt for Strahlenschutz identifiers, further indicating that highly sensitive cargo may have been secreted in isolated locations. intentionally left off transport manifests. Modern investigations using ground-penetrating radar around the Pomeranian lakes have identified anomalous underground structures consistent with temporary storage bunkers, suggesting that Operation Solstice was not merely a failed convoy, but part of a larger logistical network designed to survive the collapse of the Third Reich. Archival research in Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv in Freiburg uncovered partially redacted dispatches describing alternative routes and emergency evacuation protocols, but all subsequent communications were erased from surviving records, implying a level of post-war concealment coordinated by German intelligence remnants. Experts who have examined these files caution that while some materials were likely recovered by Allied forces, many remain unaccounted for, possibly distributed across Western Europe and Scandinavia, hidden in private estates, abandoned fortifications, or repurposed transport channels that were never officially recorded. Operation Solstice, long regarded as a lost mission, thus embodies one of the final enigmas of World War II. A convoy that never reached its documented destination, whose cargo included the most advanced technology and personnel of the Third Reich, and whose disappearance continues to elude definitive explanation even 70 years later. The story of Edelweiss 12 is preserved only in fragments of decrypted communications, eyewitness testimony, and scattered archival evidence, challenging historians to reconstruct a narrative from what was deliberately erased, hidden, or misfiled in the immediate post-war period. Even now, unexplained anomalies in recovered materials, serial number discrepancies, and unverified survivor accounts suggest that Operation Solstice was not merely a failed mission, but the opening chapter of a clandestine post-war exodus of technology, personnel, and secrets that reshaped intelligence operations across Europe and beyond. Chapter 2. The Ghost Station. Beneath Tempelhof Airfield. Beneath the iconic tarmac of Berlin's Tempelhof Airfield, where Allied bombers and Luftwaffe transports once roared, lies a hidden subterranean labyrinth known only to a select few. Constructed in late 1943 under the codename Signalstelle 12, these tunnels were designed to house an advanced communications unit of the Luftwaffe, capable of intercepting, decoding, and relaying transmissions across multiple fronts. Blueprints recovered from the Bundesarchiv reveal a sublevel extending nearly 1.2 kilometers, reinforced with 1.5-meter thick concrete walls and equipped with independent power generators designed to function even under sustained bombardment. The station's primary function, as indicated in partially declassified Heereswaffenamt files, was experimental radar interception and encrypted transmission, which included prototypes of the Fuji 240 Berlin radar system that had not yet been deployed in active operations. By July 1945, American engineers occupying Berlin inadvertently uncovered access points while renovating the airfield for post-war operations. What they discovered was astonishing: intact decoding terminals, racks of equipment stamped Heereswaffenamt Experimental Series, and crates bearing instructions in strict cipher that remained unbroken for years. Official US occupation inventories make no mention of these findings, an omission that, in retrospect, hints at deliberate suppression or reallocation of sensitive materials. Within months, these tunnels became the focus of a US Air Force initiative codenamed Project Echo Black, aimed at reverse engineering German radar technology for deployment in emerging Cold War operations. Internal memos from the National Archives indicate that former Luftwaffe scientists, many affiliated with Signalstelle 12, were quietly integrated into US research programs under Operation Paperclip, their contributions unacknowledged in official histories. Eyewitness accounts from Allied engineers detail convoys arriving at Tempelhof at night, unmarked trucks loaded with crates of electrical components, and armed personnel controlling access to the tunnels. These movements persisted between 1947 and 1950, suggesting a level of continuity and secrecy far beyond what post-war narratives admit. Investigations into surviving station logs, partially preserved on magnetic tape and in microfilm, reveal cryptic references to Project Brennweit and radar arrays capable of detecting aircraft at unprecedented ranges. Additionally, intercepted Soviet communications from the early 1950s indicate that GRU operatives were aware of Tempelhof's continued activity, attempting surveillance and infiltration to assess the transfer of German technological assets. Analysts have since speculated that the Ghost Station played a pivotal role in shaping the early US electronic intelligence framework, directly influencing radar-guided air defense systems in West Germany and Britain. Ground-level inspections conducted in the 1960s and 1970s unearthed further evidence of concealed power conduits, emergency escape routes, and sleeping quarters, confirming that the station had been fully operational for months after Berlin's surrender. Interviews with former Tempelhof personnel, corroborated by declassified CIA reports, describe complex cipher protocols, encrypted message intercepts from both the Eastern Front and Western theaters, and the storage of materials deemed too sensitive for standard POW oversight. Artifacts recovered from these tunnels, including partially functional FUG prototypes, suggest experimentation in miniaturized radar arrays and signal jamming devices, technologies that would later appear in NATO programs. Furthermore, internal OSS correspondence implies that the ghost station was never fully abandoned. Rather, it was integrated into clandestine intelligence networks, operating under different codenames to facilitate the safe transfer of personnel and technical knowledge. The tunnel's original blueprints, marked confidential, include specifications for air filtration, capable of filtering chemical agents, indicating that commanders anticipated prolonged underground occupation during both combat and occupation periods. Surviving diagrams also show secure vaults for classified documents, including raw intelligence reports, experimental schematics and communications intercept logs, all meticulously catalogued under codenames such as Echo Delta 7 and Tango. Alpha. Researchers analyzing structural anomalies in Tempelhof's foundation suggest that portions of the station may still remain inaccessible, sealed behind blast doors and reinforced concrete barriers that were never breached, implying that critical equipment or archives could remain intact even decades later. Oral histories collected from Berlin residents describe the eerie persistence of nighttime operations, with the hum of generators, the flicker of fluorescent lights in sealed entry points, and the movement of armed personnel guarding unmarked crates. These accounts, while anecdotal, align with military logs and declassified intelligence reports, painting a picture of a facility that existed beyond official oversight. The ghost station beneath Tempelhof exemplifies the intersection of wartime innovation, post-war intelligence exploitation, and the deliberate obfuscation of history. It stands as a testament to the continuity of secret operations, the blurred lines between military necessity and intelligence intrigue, and the shadow network that extended the influence of German technological advances into the early Cold War. Even today, the full scope of Signalstel 12 remains incompletely understood, with some historians arguing that critical aspects of radar development, encrypted communications, and electronic warfare were seeded in these tunnels, shaping decades of global surveillance and defense policy. As more archives are declassified and the lingering traces of underground activity are examined, Tempelhof continues to reveal how a single hidden station can obscure, manipulate, and ultimately rewrite the technical narrative of post-war intelligence efforts. Chapter 3. Operation Harbor Mist. The Baltic Submarine Mystery. The Baltic Sea, along a strategic corridor for both Axis and Allied powers, became the center of a mystery that would persist decades after the guns of World War II fell silent. In 1949, fishermen off the coast of Gotland began reporting unusual sonar readings, metallic echoes inconsistent with conventional Swedish or Soviet vessels. These anomalies, initially dismissed as equipment malfunctions, persisted over successive patrols and attracted the attention of NATO naval intelligence in 1951. Acoustic monitoring confirmed the presence of unidentified submersibles operating in restricted waters, moving at speeds and depths beyond known conventional designs. Declassified Norwegian naval reports, later cross-referenced with MI6 intelligence, suggest these vessels bore modified Type 21 U-boat propulsion systems, relics of Germany's late-war experimental submarine program. Operation Harbor Mist, as it came to be known, was initiated by Western intelligence to investigate the source of these underwater incursions, revealing a network of former Kriegsmarine officers and scientists who had vanished from Allied custody in 1946. These men were rumored to have been tasked with securing, protecting, or recovering advanced German maritime technology before it could be seized by Soviet forces. The operation uncovered partially scuttled submarines, unmarked undersea docking stations, and cryptic logbooks that recorded coordinates inconsistent with known naval charts. One recovered pressure hull, raised in 1978 near the Åland archipelago, bore the identifier AGF-6, a registry number that had been systematically erased from Kriegsmarine archives. Examination of its interior revealed surviving engineering schematics for streamlined hulls, silent-running electric motors and prototype sonar arrays, suggesting a capability far exceeding post-war NATO or Soviet designs. Eyewitness testimony from fishermen and coastal residents describes the movement of unmarked supply boats, midnight convoys, and sudden disappearances of personnel who had knowledge of these technologies. US and British intelligence memos from the early 1950s speculate that these efforts were coordinated to maintain a covert maritime advantage during the early stages of the Cold War. Analysts noted that some of the submersibles were capable of surfacing undetected within heavily patrolled shipping lanes, implying an operational depth and stealth technology not publicly acknowledged at the time. Examination of surviving logbooks also references coded missions involving reconnaissance along Soviet-controlled ports, intelligence gathering, and the clandestine transfer of components to locations in Western Europe. Norwegian patrol officers recovered documents in 1954 that suggest a continuity of these operations well into the 1960s, involving both former Axis personnel and local collaborators who were sworn to secrecy under threat of severe reprisals. Interviews with retired NATO officers corroborate these findings, noting anomalous sonar contacts and unexplained disappearances of monitoring equipment in designated observation zones. Archival records from Swedish defense ministries show internal debates about classifying these incidents as ordinary maritime anomalies to prevent public knowledge of unauthorized submarine activity within territorial waters. In parallel, American naval intelligence reports include references to ghost fleets in the Baltic, indicating that the remnants of Type 21 prototypes were adapted for post-war espionage and technology transfer. Cross-referencing Soviet naval logs from 1950-52 shows attempts to intercept or track unidentified vessels, confirming that these operations were not merely Western imagination. Further examination of AGF-6 and other recovered components reveals modifications in pressure hull metallurgy, propeller design, and battery capacity that suggest a program of experimentation far beyond the documented scope of late-war German submarine research. Some components indicate the use of innovative acoustic dampening techniques and advanced navigation systems, pointing to secret R&D initiatives that were never officially disclosed. By the late 1970s, sonar surveys still detected anomalous metallic signatures along historical patrol routes, implying that remnants of Operation Harbour Mist continued to operate covertly, or at the very least, that some experimental vessels remained hidden in Baltic depths. The operation also intersects with post-war intelligence activities, as captured German engineers and U-boat specialists were relocated to Western European ports, contributing to NATO's early submarine design programs, while simultaneously keeping their work out of Soviet reach. Even today, unexplained anomalies in the northern Baltic, unverified wreckage reports, and missing logbooks suggest that Harbour Mist's mission never fully concluded. The narrative, pieced together from sonar evidence, eyewitness accounts, naval dispatches, and archival intelligence reports, illustrates a post-war effort to preserve, manipulate, and exploit wartime technological advances in a theatre often forgotten in conventional histories. Operation Harbour Mist remains emblematic of the hidden maritime legacy of World War II, a program where the line between recovery, espionage, and ongoing covert operations was deliberately blurred, leaving an underwater enigma that challenges historians and naval strategists alike, even decades later. Chapter 4: The Kishtim Directive and the Forgotten Division. In the remote southern Urals, near the secretive city of Kishtim, the Soviet Union conducted some of its most enigmatic post-war experiments. In 1953, internal GRU communications reveal the implementation of Directive 712B, a program derived from captured German research seized during the Allied occupation of Thuringia and Berlin. The directive outlined the construction of specialized facilities designed to test portable radiological power units initially developed under the Waffenamt's experimental division. Classified project documents labeled Brennpunkt describe small-scale reactors capable of powering remote outposts or advanced industrial machinery. But internal reports also highlight significant hazards, instabilities in containment protocols, and radiation shielding deficiencies. By 1957, a catastrophic explosion occurred at one such facility, which Soviet media attributed to a chemical accident. Yet GRU dispatches and KGB internal notes detail that the incident destroyed a reactor prototype, killed several technicians, and irradiated an area that would remain restricted for decades. Examination of recovered debris indicates that some components bore serial numbers and inscriptions matching the original Wehrmacht research series, confirming a direct lineage from Nazi experimental programs. Western intelligence took notice. CIA surveillance documented unusual radiation spikes in Scandinavia, coinciding with testing phases in Kishtim, sparking concern that remnants of German nuclear or radiological technology were being redeployed under Soviet oversight. Internal Soviet correspondence references the creation of a forgotten division, a clandestine unit tasked with integrating surviving German scientists into industrial and military programs while maintaining absolute secrecy. Personnel lists, redacted for decades, show that scientists with expertise in reactor design, chemical experimentation, and electrical engineering were absorbed into projects supporting the Soviet nuclear and electronic warfare infrastructure. Investigations in the 1990s revealed fragments of operational manuals, some handwritten in German, with annotations in Cyrillic, showing step-by-step adaptation for Soviet deployment. The manuals detail reactor core configurations, portable shielding systems, and emergency venting procedures, highlighting both the sophistication and peril of the original German designs. Survivor accounts collected from retired Soviet engineers describe intense security protocols, including armed checkpoints, blindfolded transport of materials, and the deliberate erasure of personal and professional histories from state records. Archival examination indicates that the Kishtim facility had redundant fail-safes, including isolated control rooms, subterranean storage bunkers for volatile isotopes, and automated emergency power systems designed to preserve reactor integrity even under catastrophic conditions. Despite these measures, human error and insufficient containment resulted in long-term contamination, which Soviet authorities attempted to obscure both domestically and internationally. Analysts correlating GRU reports with German archival evidence concluded that Brennpunkt represented a direct continuation of Nazi technological ambition, now under Soviet direction, with the potential to influence nuclear, chemical, and radiological programs well into the Cold War. The Forgotten Division remained operational through the 1960s, moving personnel and materials between multiple clandestine sites in the Urals and Western Siberia, often under cover of industrial research projects or scientific institutes. Declassified KGB correspondence describes secure convoys, guarded by both military personnel and secret police operatives, transporting reactor components, instrumentation, and specialized materials originally produced for the Wehrmacht. Western intelligence assessments suggest that the division also experimented with portable radiological devices for battlefield deployment, although definitive evidence remains elusive. Surviving blueprints, partially reconstructed from fragments found in Berlin and Moscow archives, indicate that the design philosophy prioritized mobility, efficiency, and concealment, allowing the reactors to be disassembled, transported and reassembled in remote locations. Oral histories from local residents recount unusually high security, sudden evacuations, and unexplained accidents, which align with documented incidents in archival reports, confirming that the Soviet narrative of ordinary industrial accidents was a cover for highly classified operations. The Kishtim Directive exemplifies how German scientific expertise was systematically co-opted into Soviet post-war programs, producing both innovation and danger. It also underscores the continuity of wartime knowledge into peacetime intelligence and industrial research, with the Forgotten Division functioning as an unacknowledged bridge between Nazi experimental ambition and Cold War technological competition. Even today, the legacy of Brennpunkt and its associated facilities continues to challenge historians. As many records remain redacted, access to sites is restricted, and the full scope of the program's output, including potential radioactive materials and surviving reactor components, has yet to be fully mapped. The story of the Kishtim Directive reveals how the aftermath of war extended beyond political borders, reaching into remote regions where ambition, secrecy, and danger intertwined to shape a hidden chapter of 20th century scientific and military history. Chapter 5: The Vatican Files and Operation Ashes. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, as Europe struggled to rebuild amidst political upheaval, the Vatican emerged as an unlikely nexus for the relocation of assets and personnel linked to the collapsing Third Reich. Internal diplomatic cables, intercepted by Allied intelligence in the spring of 1946. Reference Operation Ashes, a covert initiative to move cultural assets of the Reich through Rome under the guise of ecclesiastical protection. Among these shipments, however, were items far beyond art and archives. Boxes stamped RSAG Technische Abteilung contained equipment, experimental research, and documentation from Heinrich Himmler's Sicherheitsdienst and scientific divisions. The Vatican's official records make no mention of these shipments, suggesting deliberate obfuscation at the highest levels. Italian resistance fighters stationed in Rome documented the movement of a sealed convoy from the Apostolic Archive under papal oversight, heading south toward Genoa, where the trail abruptly vanishes. By 1951, fragments of these crates surfaced in Buenos Aires harbor, registered under fictitious ecclesiastical donors, implicating former SS officers operating under Red Cross passports in the transfer. The US Counterintelligence Corps labeled the episode Ashes Unresolved, noting the potential inclusion of experimental biological data collected during Nazi operations, raising concerns about the dissemination of highly sensitive research. Archival OSS correspondence, later declassified, indicates that Vatican knowledge exceeded what was publicly acknowledged, suggesting a complex negotiation between intelligence agencies, religious authorities, and former Axis operatives. Investigations in the 1960s uncovered corroborating evidence, customs records, eyewitness testimony, and partially intact shipping manifests. Yet many critical documents had been systematically removed or destroyed. The timing of these transfers coincides with Operation Paperclip, hinting at coordinated efforts to relocate both personnel and technology beyond European jurisdiction. Interpol and Argentine judicial records reveal that certain crates, while documented under innocuous titles, contained instruments and files associated with chemical, radiological, and electronic experimentation. Survivor accounts describe clandestine storage facilities in Buenos Aires, guarded and catalogued by individuals using false identities, some of whom were later integrated into local scientific institutions. Analysts have posited that Operation Ashes facilitated the global dispersion of both intellectual property and personnel, enabling former Nazi operatives to influence post-war scientific and industrial programs in South America while remaining invisible to conventional historical scrutiny. Internal Vatican memoranda, declassified in part during the 1980s, reference the ethical dilemmas of safeguarding cultural artifacts while being aware of the cargo's sensitive nature, reflecting tension between religious obligations and geopolitical realities. Eyewitness testimony confirms that multiple convoys left Rome under armed escort at night, avoiding official ports of entry and employing secure communication protocols consistent with contemporary intelligence operations. Archival material indicates that documentation was meticulously encrypted and segregated into layers, accessible only to individuals with specific clearance, suggesting a high level of operational sophistication and premeditation. By reconstructing these movements, historians have traced the network of routes, personnel, and repositories that facilitated Operation Ashes, revealing a hidden transatlantic corridor used to transfer technology, research data, and individuals to territories beyond Allied scrutiny. The operation underscores the intersection of post-war humanitarian, religious, and intelligence efforts, blurring the lines between protection, complicity, and concealment. Even decades later, investigative efforts continue to identify surviving artifacts, reconcile conflicting testimonies, and uncover the remaining cargo, much of which likely remains hidden in private collections or misattributed archives. The Vatican files illuminate a complex chapter in post-war history, where sacred institutions intersected with intelligence operations and former Axis operatives, creating a shadow network whose impact on global scientific and military development is only beginning to be understood. Even after decades of research, countless questions remain unresolved. Where did the remnants of Operation Solstice ultimately end up? And how much of its advanced technology influenced post-war military development? Are the ghost station tunnels beneath Tempelhof still intact, harboring undiscovered equipment or records that could rewrite our understanding of Cold War intelligence? In the Baltic Sea, could the echoes of Operation Harbor Mist continue beneath the waves, silently charting a forgotten naval legacy? And in the Urals and Buenos Aires, what secrets linger in the shadows of the Kishtim Directive and Operation Ashes, hidden from official histories and awaiting rediscovery? As more archives are declassified, and as modern technology allows us to probe the hidden corners of the past, these enigmas persist, hinting at a web of clandestine operations whose full scope has yet to be revealed. The history of World War II and its aftermath remains incomplete, a puzzle of classified missions, erased files, and enduring mysteries that continues to challenge our understanding of truth